This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Middle of the week, it's Wednesday, the 21st day of June. I thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Coming up today, Mark Weaver, a constitutional attorney, our great friend, a former DOJ spokesperson. He's going to give us the lowdown on, one, what he thinks about the charge. We have a kind of a fascinating conversation about Donald Trump from a legal perspective. If you're talking about potentially 4 indictments going on simultaneously, what does that look like exactly? Does Mark Weaver think that this president is actually going to see jail time if this Biden Department of Justice is successful? What will a jury rule? Just sort of the parameters of how this thing will unfold over the next year and a half, particularly now that we got news yesterday. They're moving this trial, or at least the initial volley is middle of August, which is really fast. But how will that unfold? Mark Weaver will break it down for us. Kari Lake, the former Arizona gubernatorial candidate, will join us today. She has a brand new book called Unafraid, just getting started. Those of you who were with me last night for the Sebastian Gorka Cigar Night, that was a blast. I put some pictures up at the Harumph Society today. If you're not a subscribing member yet, I hope you'll check it out. And, become a subscriber so you can comment and let me know what you thought if you were there last night. I want to hear your thoughts for sure. Very quickly, I just want to get into this because some of you have reached out to me very angry at me last week that I was critical of the House Republicans who didn't support the censure of Adam Schiff because they were just doing their constitutional duties. Well, now a revamped censure of Adam Schiff is supposedly going to be offered today, and supposedly the Republicans who weren't supportive of it last week are supportive of it now because this unconstitutional $16 million fine was taken out. Okay, fine, but here's some more news about the new censure resolution that will be offered today. Ready for this? The new resolution just calls for censuring Schiff, while last week's involved censuring and condemning Schiff. The new version also omits non-binding clauses that says Schiff purposely deceived his committee, Congress, and the American people, that he exploited his positions on the House Intelligence Committee to encourage it was a late night, to encourage and excuse abusive intelligence investigations of Americans for political purposes. So, today they're going to offer brand new resolution for Schiff to be censured, but without any kind of verbiage that's hostile or tough in any way on Schiff. God bless him. So, quite a development. No fine and no clauses calling him out specifically for being deceitful and exploiting his committee to abuse an intelligence investigation. So the first censure had a poison pill. The second censure has a poison pill. So what does that tell us here? Are Republicans about to vote for a toothless censure? And if they don't, it wasn't a serious effort, and Kevin McCarthy, frankly, didn't have the votes, and he knew it all along. Why is the focus, by the way, on the voting members of Congress and not the Speaker here? I'm very suspicious of this, just as I was last week, and those of you who just stridently defended people like Thomas Massie because of the Constitution, this stinks to high heaven. I don't know what the hell's going on here, but the idea that they have now not only removed fines, but they've even removed language condemning Schiff. What are we doing? What are House Republicans doing exactly? There's a Durham hearing going on right now. And we'll see what audio comes of that for tomorrow's show. But I got to tell you, I'm not terribly impressed. And it's been a tough week, and we're only to Wednesday. And the House Republicans are all we have, and not putting on the best face at the moment. I'll just say that. And when I get the reason we haven't done it is because of the Constitution. Okay, the Constitution. Okay, it's cute. All right, let me tell you first before we get into today's show about the guy that wants to save you money on your health insurance policy. I don't know if you buy out of pocket health insurance, but Boy, if you do, it can be expensive. I know that. And John Ruhlman at usmedicalplan.com. usmedicalplan.com. He's where you need to go. You need to reach out today and give him a couple of minutes. Tell him what you spend on your health insurance costs. If you're in the middle of an insurance dispute right now, they won't pay a bill or something, call John. He has a customer care department. He's devoted to this very issue, helping people navigate the bureaucracy of health insurance. He wants to help, and I want you to call him because he will. I guarantee you he will help, and he will find you a cheaper rate, not less coverage. People always think, okay, you give me some cut rate insurance, then it cuts corners and costs. No, John will never reduce the care or coverage you get, but he only wants to reduce the costs monthly out of pocket. So whether you own a small business, whether you're a senior and you're on a fixed income and you want a supplemental program, if you're a young person just buying your own insurance for the first time, you don't get it through work or whatever, it's a no-brainer. You got to call him. 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321, usmedicalplan.com. Morning Joe this morning has a new poll. 85% of non-GOP voters say Trump should exit the race. 85% of non-GOP voters say Trump should exit the race. Just out of morbid curiosity, given what we now know about the family Biden, how many non-Democrat voters say Biden should exit the race? I can play that game all day. How many non-Democrat voters say Biden should exit the race? How many Democrat voters say Biden should exit the race? We know that over half of them have already said in polls that he should get out. Trump's favorability down 10% among Republicans, according to this poll. I don't know what this new... They're touting a new poll, and they're very, very excited that it's bad news for Trump. In what sane universe do we live in where the current sitting president of the United States has a lot to celebrate today? What do they tell themselves? That Trump is the only issue for them? It's smooth sailing if Trump's out of the way? Is that what they're telling themselves? Do they really think that this husk is going to cruise to re-election again? Now, look, it depends on how cynical you are. I understand there are many of you in the audience that think that's already a fait accompli and locked. That came up last night at our cigar event with Dr. Gorka. What a time we had last night in Conshohocken, just outside of Philadelphia. For those of you who aren't in the immediate area or aren't familiar, the Cigar Republic was our host, and I have to say, yeah, I'm going to get into all of it in a minute. I just want to take a minute to have a little fun and smile a little bit because there's not much else to smile about. These guys, may I just say, whether you're in, and I didn't get specifically where they are in Connecticut, and I know there's another one in New York. These guys, this group of brothers, I believe, and I think I met them all, or maybe they're business associates. Seems several of them were brothers. Is that right?
The two, yes, two of them are.
Or there's two?
I believe, yep.
Okay, and then it seemed to be a group of them. I don't know that own or operate or run or invest in it. I don't know, but they said they started the Cigar Republic in Connecticut, and then have eventually been making their way south. I laughed. So you're going to be like every other business in the country. You're just eventually going to make your way all the way to Florida and then call it a day. That's where you're going to wind up. It just progressively. But they opened another one in New York, and then they just 2 years ago opened this new facility in Conshohocken. And folks, I'll just tell you, if you ever have cause to be in the area, this, I would say that this is now, how do I put this? There was only one cigar bar in the Philadelphia metro area that I used to go to, and then Center City became Center City, and I stopped going to it. And there are places in the suburbs that are kind of nice or interesting to me or whatever. This is the first, what I would call first class, not snooty hoity-toity, but like first class business casual cigar bar out there. It's like cigar bars can do one of two things. They can either be holes in the wall, with guys wearing ripped T-shirts. You're going, what can I do for you? And you feel like maybe a crime's going on. I got a chair in the back if you want to. And it's like an old sofa they brought in from home that's got stuffing falling out of the cushions. There's those. You're like, well, okay, I guess I'll sit here in the dump and smoke a cigar. Then there's the other. There's some that are so highfalutin and so snobby. It's a bunch of guys bringing in their, newly made over gal pals that look like Barbie dolls. And they're wearing suits and jewelry to show off how well off they are. And it's like, it's obnoxious. It either like you've stepped into some kind of, Great Gatsby wannabe remake or something. I don't need that. I'm not going out clubbing. And I'd also like to not feel like I'm in an episode of Sanford and Son. Somewhere in the middle is what I would enjoy. The Cigar Republic struck that balance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Not a dump, not like, it was classy, but not in a snobby way. Like you walk in and you feel like, oh man, you can come in from a round of golf and feel comfortable.
Yep.
Or you can be in there in a suit, or you can be in there in flip-flops and shorts. They're cool with it, but there's a level of dignity to it that's not highfalutin, not a dump. Just, they hit it perfect. Gorgeous bar. They brought in, do they always serve food?
I think that's the restaurant below them that brings the food up. Yeah.
Was that spectacular?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if that's a customary thing they do there, but I would strongly suggest to them they do that too, because if they do that, I'd never leave. You may have to throw me out of that place. That was incredible. So what great hosts they were. Our team has always made it fantastic and made it work. And to everybody who came out, what a night we had. Gorka was on fire. Gorka drove here from the D.C. area. He prefers to drive, which, I don't know, I guess, versus take the train or something. I guess I can understand it. But, yeah, he drives 2.5 hours each way from the D.C. metro area to make it work. And I think he would have hung out all night if we'd asked him. I was like, do you need to get home? I was very sensitive to the fact that he's got to, drive. And he was like, well, I'll stay, And so he hung out for quite a while and then got in the car and drove home last night.
That's at the event in October. I saw a Mustang with a Trump bumper sticker parked in the driveway. I'm like, what? I only discovered that he drives to Philly when we do these events every time.
He prefers to drive, he says.
Yeah.
So just a fantastic night. We recorded it all, right?
We did. Yes, we did.
Video, audio?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And will that be for consumption later or no? Do we know yet, or have we come up with a plan for it?
We'll absolutely have some it'll be out there.
All right.
Yeah.
I wasn't entirely sure what we do with those things. Or if we just hold them for ransom later or something, trying to extract money.
I'll make sure that it gets out, Chris. Unlike the Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah, right. Which, of course, came up last night. It was all everybody was talking about because, here it is on fortuitous in some sense that we have our big cigar night with Sebastian Gorka, a former aide to President Trump. And on that day, after I put the show to bed, all hell breaks loose on a random Tuesday in the summer. Why not? Now that's become the news cycle. Again, it used to be from about June to August, nothing happened. And now on a random Tuesday in the dead of summer, they set a trial date for a former president, and the current president's son, if you want to say charged, I'd hesitate to even use the term. But anyway, both of those news items broke yesterday, so we had lots to talk about with Gorka last night. And I can't, there's nothing new I can say to you about it. Let me start with this. Give you a different perspective on this for a second. To underscore just how silly, how weak, how insincere, how unserious, how, again, you've heard the term two-tiered system of justice, how absurd it is that we find ourselves here with this stripper-banging crackhead basically getting off with a slap on the wrist. You ready for this? An appellate court has just allowed, after it was initially overturned, an appellate court has allowed New Jersey to implement new gun restrictions in the state. And I want very specifically to focus on one element of this. The Third Circuit Court of Appeals has reinstated key parts of New Jersey's law that prohibits carrying guns in certain parts of the state. A 2-1 decision from the Third Circuit allows multiple so-called sensitive places where New Jersey law bans guns to take effect as litigation plays out. Prior to that, as you know, this absolute hero of a judge called Marie Bum, she blocked much of the state's sensitive places from taking effect, meaning guns could be carried, like the Bill of Rights says you can carry guns. Marie Bum, the judge, said, you can't do that. No. Well, the Third Circuit to the rescue and said, sure they can. Go ahead. 2-1 decision yesterday, right? Tuesday's court order means that, listen to this, carrying guns within 100 feet of public gatherings, nursery schools, preschools, zoos, summer camps, public parks, libraries, museums, places where alcohol is served, entertainment facilities, casinos, and healthcare facilities are prohibited. Some key parts of the law are still blocked. On private property that is open to the public, like retail stores, if a property owner does not give express permission that guns are allowed on the premises, people can still carry guns there, but a property owner still has the right to not allow guns. The liability insurance mandate for concealed carry holders is also blocked. My point is, New Jersey has gone to great lengths to keep guns from all of these highly sensitive areas, right, like schools. And a Third Circuit has decided that, yes, that's completely reasonable to do so. Well, yesterday we're told that Hunter Biden has effectively, we know he's illegally purchased a gun. He lied on the gun form to get it, and then I guess his gal pal at the time, illegally disposed of it. Where? In a dumpster behind a school. So, to my knowledge, and maybe I'll get some legal counsel on this later to clarify if I'm right or wrong. To my knowledge, you've immediately run afoul of a couple of different criminal statutes as it relates to guns. Lying on a form to purchase it and then illegally chucking it at a dumpster behind a school. Those two things alone, I would think would land most of it. And I asked our friend Anthony at Delaware Valley Sports Center, who was the sponsor of last night, I said, am I right? Would this not land us all in a lot of hot water? He said, oh, yeah, it would. It would land me as the store owner, as the store proprietor in a lot of hot water. We'd all be in prison together, likely. But yesterday we were told that, not a big deal. Nothing to see here. In fact, most legal experts say it's very rare that charges like some were speculating would come against Hunter Biden. Even the charges that were brought against him are rare. The media yesterday would have you believe, mainstream media, would have you believe that this was a very heavy-handed decision, that the Department of Justice really got tough. This is outrageous. Almost beyond the pale. Tougher than tough. The gaslighting on this. You and I both know if we lied on a form to purchase a gun, you know you'd go to prison. You know you would. Legal experts say charges against Hunter Biden are rarely brought. So you see, what he got yesterday is rare and tough. Listen to some of the reaction to this yesterday in no particular order.
So, Frank, in addition to these tax charges, Hunter Biden faced a separate gun charge, but that will go to a pretrial diversion agreement and will not be subject to the plea agreement. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, the heart of that charge, Jose, is really the fact that Hunter did not disclose that he was a drug addict when he came to apply for and obtain the gun. It's a rare charge because it's so difficult to prove that someone is a drug addict at a specific point in time. So because that's the core of the charge, the diversion is often to ensure that you're drug-free moving forward. So what we'll see here is an agreement that I will remain clean from drugs for the next 24 months, and that's likely to involve testing. It's, again, a rare charge. I think it indicates that the prosecutor's gone out of his way to charge everything that could have been charged. And then with regard to the tax charges, it's been my experience in FBI cases that have adjacent tax violations. The IRS is not so much, when it comes to individuals, not so much interested in punishment, but rather getting the overdue funds back. And in this case, it appears Hunter has paid over $1 million back. And that's, I think, why, in part, we're seeing misdemeanor charges only.
Oh, yeah. You know the IRS. They'll leave you alone. They just want their money. That's all. They're not going to give you any trouble. They just want to make sure they're getting the money that they're owed. Your friendly neighborhood IRS, they'll leave you alone. You don't pay your taxes? Just pay them whenever you get around to it. You know, okay, so you dropped $1 million. No big deal, bookkeeping error or whatever. We good. Just make sure you pay it. Sell a couple of paintings. Everything's fine. Catch this? And on the gun thing, look, I'm going to refer to my own embarrassing legal issue for a minute because, it happened to me and I own it, and it's a part of my life that I regret and I hate, but I'll just tell you the truth about it. I've shared with you before that I got a DUI years ago. I don't drink anymore, but back when I did, it was one of the lowest points of my life. I got pulled over. Thank God I didn't hurt anybody. I'd had more than I should have to drink and drive, and I got pulled over on the highway for speeding, actually. And I had to pay a fine, and I was put in what was called a deferment program. Rather than, and the deferment program was basically rather than have it on my record, it would be expunged if I went through what they called a deferment program, which is you go to a few mandatory sessions run by the county, talk about the dangers of drunk driving, and it's actually really powerful. And actually what was kind of depressing and amazing about it was the number of people joining me. What will stun you someday is to go to a mandatory deferment program for drunk driving for first-time offenders, and you see the thousands of people waiting to attend it. That's actually what's kind of shocking, to be perfectly honest with you, but neither here nor there. But that's what I was told was a deferment. Like, for a first-time offense for drinking and driving, which is deadly serious and not something anyone should ever do, and I fully recognize that could have taken lives if something worse had happened, and thank God it didn't. But a deferment program, that's the first time I've ever run afoul of the law in my life. Big one, but it's the first time I'd ever done anything in my life, and I was put through, I paid a $1,500 fine, and I got a deferment and my record expunged if I attended mandatory classes. I'm wondering, would I get a deferment if I lied on a gun form?
Nah, I don't think so, Chris.
You don't think I'd be treated the same as Hunter? I wouldn't get a deferment?
Nope.
You think the IRS would say, hey, look, our biggest concern is that you pay the $1.2 million in taxes. I understand you didn't get around to it in 2017-18 when you owed us, but hey, it's 2022. We got our money. We're good. We good. You think the IRS say we good?
No.
It's so absurd. And these gaslighters are sitting on cable news telling you that this is actually very tough stuff, what the Department of Justice has brought here. Really, really tough. Are you kidding me? I was treated more harshly in my first-time DUI course. Legal experts say charges against Hunter Biden rarely brought. Under a plea deal reached with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Delaware, an office headed by Donald Trump appointee David Weiss. They're quick to throw that in there to make it seem like it's really legitimate. This was a Trump appointee, don't you know? And if a Trump appointee... Now suddenly Trump's name is useful. Trump appointee is usually a bastardization. Judge Eileen Cannon, Trump appointee. She's the one hearing the Trump documents case down in Miami, a Trump appointee. Kavanaugh, Trump appointee. But since David Weiss was a Trump appointee and he's still in place, this is, hey, listen, if there's anybody that hates Hunter Biden and wants to see him pay, it's probably a Trump appointee, and even he couldn't do any worse than just a little slap on the wrist here, so you should feel good about it. Hunter Biden will plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor charges of failing to pay taxes, which he later reimbursed. Biden also faces a felony gun charge, possession of a firearm by a person who is an unlawful user of or addicted to a controlled substance, but it is likely to be dismissed if he meets certain conditions under the plea agreement. In other words, he's not going to see one single day in jail. And at the same time, there are people with a straight face who tell themselves and will say to your face and have said to me on social media, it makes perfect sense that the former president of the United States should be locked away for the rest of his life for being in possession of documents that they don't believe he should have. Now, if you tell yourself that, you're not an intellectually honest person. There's nothing I can do for you. And I can't even engage or fight with people who don't see the insanity in this. On the same day, we're discussing locking away a former president for the rest of his natural life under espionage charges. We say that a man who lied on a gun form, pocketed millions of dollars from foreign interests, and we're not even talking about that, which we'll get into in a minute, and didn't pay $1.2 million in taxes. He was aggressively treated by the law yesterday by not seeing a day in jail. We're off the rails. And even people on the left who are defending this or trying to explain it as really, something was really, we rarely see this kind of punishment for Hunter. They know deep down they would never be treated this way. I mean, the former congressman from Philadelphia, Shaka Fatah, how long did he go away for not paying taxes? Wasn't it taxes?
It was. I think it was 10 years. I'll check, but I believe it was 10 years.
I think he's still in federal prison, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. He was my congressman, yeah.
And it was just tax evasion, I'm pretty sure. And I know he didn't owe $1.2 million in taxes. I'm quite certain of that. I mean, how many people have gone away for money? Well, I mean, the you get it. From the New York Post today, we've hit guac bottom. That's their headline, guacamole. Nope, sorry, that's not it. Wrong one. This is their cover story today. That was the story linked to it. Hunter gets away with this. Only slap on the wrist for gun and tax cases. Hunter Biden won't be charged with money laundering, bribery, or trafficking after slap on the wrist plea deal. I mean, what? I can't say anything creative about it. You understand it, and I understand it. It's outrageous. As I tweeted yesterday, I really can't say it any better than what I tweeted. The former president of the United States is in possession of paperwork, and the federal government is making the argument that he should be locked away for life. Hunter Biden evades taxes over $1 million, has a felony gun purchase, and he gets a plea deal. So it's really about you being taunted, is really what it is. I don't think this even has so much to do with Trump or Hunter Biden. It's taunting you. What are you going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? I don't know. What do you say about it? It's dispiriting, and I could feel the despair in a lot of people in the room last night who just feel like, I don't know, what was your takeaway? I asked Gorka, I said, I hear this pretty regularly. People feel just completely, and it's on purpose. You hear the guy we're pretending to be president right now come out, and all he says is, I'm proud of my son. I'm proud of my son. Who says that? I mean, you can say I love my son. I stand with my son. My son had trouble, and I support him through this difficult time. What's there to be proud of exactly? Even that is like a poke in your eye. It's just willful disregard for the truth. Everything about this administration is looking you straight in the face with a smile and poking you in the chest. Yeah, he did things that would lock you away forever. We don't care. And we're proud of him. We're proud of him for doing it. The other guy, former president of the United States, has documents that we don't think he should have. We're going to make sure he's locked away for the rest of his natural life. And so if you even think of voting for him, just understand we're out to make sure he's not even a viable contender to challenge our power. On the same day, essentially, really the same week, that's what's going on. We've really not seen this in our country's history before. Those in power committing crimes flagrantly, bragging about it, saying they're proud of it, and telling you, who would be the challenge to their authority and power, we're going to make sure you have no alternatives to us. And if you try, and if you speak up or you gather for things like January 6th, or you try to elect Trump again, we're going to throw him in prison, and we'll throw you in prison. You won't see the light of day. They're taunting. All of it's a taunt. And I don't know how it ends. I don't despair about it. Don't misunderstand. Politico has some rare journalism breaking out over there. I'm a little shocked at this today. Pretty extensive report here, 4 pages, in fact. The Burisma board, a laptop scandal, and struggles with addiction. What to know about Hunter Biden's legal troubles. I don't know what happened over at Politico, but a random act of journalism exploded over there yesterday. You should read it. They extensively write about Hunter's ties to Chinese businesses, as well as the guy we're pretending to be president. Hunter traveled with his father, then vice president, to China in December 2013 on a trip. He helped arrange for a Chinese businessman and the vice president to shake hands. The fund they established helped, quote, a subsidiary of a Chinese defense conglomerate buy a Michigan auto parts maker, the Times reported. It helped a Chinese company buy one of the world's richest cobalt mines. Cobalt is an essential ingredient in batteries for electric cars. The Times noted that Joe Biden's administration has warned that China might use its growing dominance of cobalt to disrupt America's retooling of the auto industry to make electric vehicles. Then they go on to talk about the Ukrainian energy company that Hunter Biden was tied to. Then Politico even reminds its readers of the lie that 51 intelligence officials said the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't even real. It was Russian disinformation, and as such, social media, in collusion with the federal government, tried to keep that from you. But years passed, writes Politico, and no evidence emerged that the reporting on the laptop sprung from Russian disinformation operation, as Vox noted. And Politico and the New York Times and the Washington Post all reported on the laptop's content. Now they want credit. Twitter's former head of safety and security told Congress this year the social network shouldn't have blocked the story. And Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook's parent company, also expressed regret about the move. Listen, this is revisionist history, of course. Now they're making it sound like they're all pure and clean as the wind-driven snow. Hey, we good. We're sorry we reported on it. Oh, yeah. Fat lot of good it did now. Thanks a lot. But the point is, Politico is actually recounting this today, and I'm a little slack-jawed. They're reminding everybody that they completely lied. These people lied about the existence of this laptop to begin with. They didn't cover it. They kept it from you. And it's why, we're going to talk to Kari Lake today. I asked Gorka about this yesterday. He seemed to agree for the most part. I said that this should be Trump's singular focus in media interviews going forward. All he needs to say about rigged elections is not anything specific about Wisconsin or Arizona or Pennsylvania. He needs to singularly say, you people rigged the election. Mr. President, it's been reviewed by multiple judges and many times, and there's never been any proof of No, that's not what I mean. You rigged the election when you falsely reported that 51 intelligence officials said there was no laptop. There was no Hunter laptop. That it was Russian disinformation. You lied about that. And the federal government colluded with social media to keep that from people. Perhaps millions of Americans said they would have changed their vote had they known the existence of this laptop, and you aided and abetted the lie. That's rigging an election, my friend. That's all Trump needs to say to every media outlet he faces when he says rigged election. In my view, was your read that Gorka agreed with that? He gently pushed back a bit, I think, but
he did, and I was excited to hear you say that to Gorka in that company, in that intimate setting, because it's so important, Chris. That's really what he needs to do about the election interference and rigging.
I think he mostly agreed with that, though.
Yeah, he looked at it favorably, yeah.
So Politico's actually, I have to say, they're actually doing some journalism here this morning and reminding you of the Hunter Biden laptop. The guns, the drugs, the influence peddling, none of that. We're not going to talk about any of that. It's been dealt with now. This is pretty unusually harsh. It was a Trump appointee, this Weiss. Pretty harsh what he did yesterday, really, if you look at it. That's all they said yesterday. All the people that watched left-wing media, that's all they heard yesterday. This is really pretty unusually harsh.
Obviously, you're already hearing a lot of shouting, oh, sweetheart deal, oh, this, oh, that. None of us really knows the details of the possible charges here and exactly what was agreed to as part of this plea, Jennifer. But how does one assess whether this is the type of deal that a normal person, not a president's child, would get in this circumstance?
Why do you
So
have
you
to
would look
ask?
to other similar cases, right? So on the gun form charge, it's very, very standard for someone in this situation who lies on the form because they're an addict. The gun is long gone, apparently only had it for a couple of weeks. It's very standard in these circumstances for this diversion to occur and to wipe out the charges, assuming he successfully completes it. So that's totally standard. And the tax fraud is similar as well. I mean, he paid those taxes back a long time ago. That's something that DOJ takes very, very seriously when negotiating these deals. And I'll also say that Hunter Biden was an addict at the time. And so there was discussion of this back when this investigation got going. When you're talking about a drug addict, you have to think about whether you can prove the mens rea. If this goes to trial, is he going to be able to undercut their case about whether he knowingly and willfully didn't pay his taxes? So given all of that and given similar cases with tax fraud, this is not a sweetheart deal. It's a deal. I think it's a good deal for Hunter Biden in that he will stay out of prison and end up with only 2 misdemeanors on his record. But it's certainly not a sweetheart deal out of line with what happens in the rest of the country.
I think we all have to look at this and think to ourselves, what would someone who's not Hunter Biden receive for punishment? Says the bonehead on CNN. Yeah, we all are, jackass. We're all sitting here imagining if we'd not paid $1 million in taxes and illegally purchased a gun and threw it in a dumpster. We're all imagining what would happen to us, and we all know our asses would be thrown in prison. Idiot. Well, I don't know. I think all of us are sitting here trying to assess is this a reasonable punishment for. It's absurd. There are people being dragged out of their home in the early morning hours simply for standing in front of an abortion clinic on a sidewalk and being shackled and taken downtown and read the riot act like animals. Well, this is fairly standard stuff. Sure, fairly standard. Jonathan Karl with just the tiniest, gentlest little bit of issue with this for the Bidens. I mean, you'd think this was a total exoneration for the Biden family yesterday. All of them were just, I'm very proud of my son, and this is really pretty harsh. And good to close the chapter on Hunter Biden. I guess there's nothing more to discuss, really. Jonathan Karl does point out one little sticky wicket to his credit.
He insisted, he said, as recently as last month, my son did nothing wrong. Well, now his own Justice Department has entered into a plea agreement where his son has pled guilty to 2 crimes, and has been charged with a third crime, a felony. So clearly his son did something wrong.
Well, he's proud of him. Hey there, it's Chris, back on the phone with my dentist and friend, Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, Pennsylvania, just off the Blue Route with new technology. You have not just new associates, but they brought new technology into the business to make it a little easier for patients.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time in dentistry. We have now introduced a 3-dimensional X-ray called a CBCT scan in our office, which allows us to diagnose and things earlier for patients. My daughter is placing a lot of implants in the past had referred out. It's now being done in-house. And we also, we've been using dental or computer scanners for taking impressions for crowns for about the last 2 to 3 years. We now have introduced the next step, which is a milling machine, and we can now make crowns in the office. Things can be completed in the same day as opposed to having a temporary crown put on and 3 weeks later coming back and having a permanent crown put on. It's really a game changer, and it's a time saver for our patients to not have to make multiple visits to the office.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. It's a thrill to be joined by Kari Lake. She has become probably, I think, the name most synonymous with the fight on election integrity. There's probably nobody in the country who has done more to call attention to election integrity issues than Kari Lake. She's still deeply invested in it as we fight in 2024, and glad to have her today. I met you very briefly, Ms. Lake. I welcome you to the show. I met you very briefly at CPAC. You couldn't have been more kind and generous with your time. Great to talk with you.
Oh, it's so nice to talk to you again, and thank you for having me on. I'm excited about my book coming out, and we talk about the elections in my book, but we go all over and I don't hold anything back. It's an exciting book, so I'm excited to be here to talk about it.
The brand new read is called Unafraid, Just Getting Started. Pre-order it now, but I mean it's coming out here very, very quickly. Actually, the 27th is the official release date, but Unafraid, Just Getting Started. You are unafraid. I think that's what people anybody who's fair would say. There was never fear in you. And you can't right now. You can't play patty cake. You can't be timid. And I think that's what people are just so desperate for right now, is people that are not going to play by the old established rules.
Yeah, I mean, we've been through so much as a country, our families individually, people being forced to do things they weren't comfortable with during COVID that, hurt their families, their livelihoods, their businesses, their health. And, I think we were kind of all afraid. And finally, when you finally just step up and say, no, I'm going to speak out on this and we're going to do something about it. Once you kind of walk through that fear and you're on the other side, nothing can make you stand back down. And we need to stand up right now and fight for our country. Frankly, everything's on the line. We've seen what happened with this terrible botched 2020 election that landed a guy like Joe Biden in the White House. It's destroying our country. And frankly, it's setting the world on a trajectory that is incredibly dangerous and frightening. So, and then they did the same thing in 2022 in Arizona. So I am fighting because I think election integrity is the issue of our life right now, of the moment, in order to save our country. And so we're still fighting and we're appealing our case, and we know we have the truth on our side, and that's what will ultimately win.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the breaking news in the last 24 hours. It's interesting. On the same day, at the same time, a lot happened in just the last 24 hours. Donald Trump sat down with Bret Baier. I kind of want to pick your brain about that. But also, just a few hours later, really, comes notice that Hunter Biden has now pled guilty to two tax misdemeanors and a lesser gun charge for pleading guilty to avoid jail time, is the report. I'm kind of roughly. Trump responded on Truth Social, said this is effectively a traffic ticket. So a couple of slaps on the wrist for tax evasion and a misdemeanor on a gun. What's your reaction?
Yeah. They know they have to do something with Hunter Biden so they can check the box and say they did something, but this is outrageous. I mean, the guy was behind tens of millions of dollars, accepting tens of millions of dollars in payout money from our adversary, the communist Chinese regime, and he sold out our country, and he sent some of that money to his dad, and he did the same thing with Ukraine. And isn't it coincidental? Now we're involved in sending over hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars to Ukraine. So the fact that they're throwing a little tax issue at Hunter Biden is a joke. That laptop was filled with so much depravity, drug use, inappropriate, not to say the least criminal activity. And the most egregious being that he sold out, used his dad's position to sell out our country. And that they're hitting him with this is sickening. Meanwhile, they throw witch hunt after witch hunt at President Trump, who's done nothing except try to help save our country and put us on solid footing so that we can move forward. It's really despicable.
Yeah, the gun charge alone. I mean, he lied in applying for a gun. It's a felony. I mean, I think any of us would land in prison if we lied on a gun application. Would we not? Just that alone. Never mind the taxes.
Well, and they've known about this for years, possibly longer. I mean, maybe decades they've known about this, and they've done nothing until now because the pressure is on. They know that the DOJ looks absolutely weaponized because it is weaponized, and they're realizing, well, we have to do something with Hunter. What is the lightest punishment we can give him? And they have obviously found it with these charges. But I think the people are onto it. I think the American people have figured out that this is a two-tiered justice system. There is no justice if you are not in the Biden corruption camp. There's no justice, and anybody who speaks out and tries to do the right thing is going to be persecuted. And we're seeing that with President Trump. God bless him for continuing to stand there in the gap and take all of this abuse because he loves our country.
Kari Lake has a brand new book called Unafraid, Just Getting Started. Your other reaction, I would ask, I mean, at almost the same time, almost simultaneously, yesterday came the news that they've set a federal trial date now for the Trump situation for like August 14th or something, like mid-August. That everyone that we have talked to, Kari, suggested that they thought that this would maybe carry well through the election and post-election. You're not surprised that this came this quickly?
A little bit. I mean, what I think is going on is they're trying to figure out if it'll stick and if they'll have, success. And for them, success is trying to bring down President Trump. And they want to make sure, in case this thing falls apart, which I believe it will, that they can throw something else at him in the coming months. This is an effort to stop Trump, because Trump is the one guy who's not owned by the political machine, the corrupt political machine. He's fighting back, and there's a lot of people that have probably done some pretty bad things that will be caught when Trump gets back into office and starts to unturn and overturn all of these stones and root out the corruption and get us back on strong footing for America and for our kids' future.
Curious, I know you're traveling with the book and other things. Did you happen to see the exchange with Bret Baier? I was laughing yesterday that, it's like the Never Trump crew, and I'm not even talking about, Democrats. I'm talking about Republicans who have decided it's time to move on from Trump. People that have their honest feelings about it, whatever, but they're just convinced now that this conversation with Bret Baier, that's it. Trump admitted to obstruction of justice. Now he's going down. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that. But I don't know if you saw the interview, if you thought it was fair. I know you've sat on with Bret Baier.
Yeah, I sat down with Bret Baier, and he did an ambush on me. It's interesting. I made it through the primary with very little. Fox would not interview me. I finally get an interview with Bret Baier. They were interviewing my opponents who were, polling at 2% and acting like they were the front runner. And I think because of pressure from the America First movement, they were kind of going, why is Fox not interviewing this candidate in Arizona? So I finally got invited on Bret Baier's show, and he did an ambush interview. He doesn't like America First candidates. And I did see a little bit of the interaction with President Trump. It's typical, going at him, very negative, trying to get him. When if you watch what they do with, I watched an interview that Fox did with DeSantis, and it was all about what would you do in your first month in office and how would you do this and give us some policy. They never give Trump a chance to talk policy. They just want to, they asked him about the election, and I'm glad that he will not back down from that, because we have to have honest elections that all Americans have faith in. But then when they ask him about it and he answers, they go, all he would talk about is the election. It's pretty sad. It's like, Brett, if you don't want him to talk about it, don't ask about it. But I wish they would talk to President Trump about Agenda 47. It is the best policy agenda I've ever seen. And, much of it is similar to what I want to do here in Arizona, which is take some common sense, pro-America policy to get us back on the right track. Because right now, the way we're going, I worry about the future of this country and if we'll have a country and a constitution left for our kids. But I figured it would be an ambush, and it was. I thought President Trump did a good job holding his own. And it saddens me that Fox felt they had to do that, because they certainly don't do that with the candidate that they are behind. They actually give him a walk in the park.
Kari Lake has a brand new book out called Unafraid, Just Getting Started, available for pre-order right now. It's out on June 27th. Election integrity. You're a professional communicator by training, and you're just wonderful at truncating a message and getting to the nut of it in a soundbite world in which we live. This is my one gentle criticism of former President Trump. I know that there's a lot to discuss in the forensics of the election 2020 and 2022, and you certainly know it better than most. I wonder if there's a better way to kind of quickly push back on the media when they say, hey, this has been adjudicated, there's been no fraud found, you keep saying you won, it's been... Can Trump not credibly just crucify the media and just throw the Hunter Biden lie back in their face and let that be unto itself enough? And put them on the defensive and say, you guys cost me millions of votes when you said 51 intelligence officials said the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't real, and when media colluded and social media colluded with the government to keep that story from people. Polls say people would have changed their votes if they'd known. Is that enough? Is that without going into the semantics of Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania? Or do you think that's important?
I think he's doing a good job at talking about it, but you get the propaganda media, and all they say is there's no evidence, and you want to pull your hair out. Yes. Because it's always opposite day with the fake news. There's actually so much evidence that you can talk about the election interference, how the FBI got involved, how the technocrats got involved in silencing people, how they diminished and pushed aside the Hunter laptop. and anybody who did talk about it got shadow banned on social media, then you can talk about what actually went wrong, how they stopped counting. Because even though they cheated in such massive ways, the people who voted for Trump, there were so many of them, it was such a huge landslide that they had to literally stop counting. They had to get Fox to call the race in Arizona with 1% of the votes counted. And it was just it was a complete mess, up one side, down the other. But I don't think anything that you say to the fake news is going to change them. They're on their narrative is there. They're on a talking point mission to actually say nothing to see here. Don't talk about election integrity. Don't talk about election fraud. You mean to tell me that all of the corruption in our government, that we can't talk about the corruption that we see in broad daylight? How in my election, how 60% of the machines were not working on election day, and hundreds of thousands of ballots with no signature verification. I mean, we have to eventually talk about this if we want to save our country. I do think President Trump should pivot. He should say one thing and then pivot right into his agenda and literally force these anti-American propagandists into talking about his incredible agenda. And I believe that he needs to do more of that, and I probably will tell him that.
You're a fascinating figure in that, again, you come from the media, so you see this in a unique way, and you ran for office. The Tucker phenomenon is something I'd love for you to expound on if you have a moment, because him leaving Fox tanking in terms of numbers, worse than we've ever seen, and Tucker exploding on a format like Twitter. He says, I'll stay here as long as I'm free to speak. But it looks like maybe, and just from a media perspective, I don't know how you read Fox now threatening him with cease and desist and that sort of thing. We're watching a seismic shift in the way people are communicating out there, aren't we?
Oh, totally. I mean, he is single-handedly taking down cable news and news. It's like we can go around these people, and it's been happening really for some time now when we see the bias in the news. But this year, it's almost in hyper speed. Because we're realizing that, I always said this on the campaign trail, I walked away from the news and I worked for what I thought was the good guys, but then I realized in corporate news, when corporations own our information and our news, there is no good guy. They have an agenda, they're pushing an agenda, and that agenda was never more clear than during COVID. And, unfortunately, when they got rid of Tucker, and I haven't seen his contract, but I kind of know how these things go, they're paying him to sit on the sidelines to silence his voice. And that is absolutely horrifying that they are basically taking away his First Amendment rights at a time when we need him going into this election. We need some truth tellers out there. They're paying him a fortune to sit there and not say anything. And I'm glad that he's saying it's not about the money. It's about using our voice right now, and he's fighting back. And I pray that he wins. But I don't think it's about making money. I think these corporate news outlets at this point in time don't even care about making money because they don't want Trump to get into office and expose the corruption that even the media is in on. They're in on taking this line from our corrupt government, pushing propaganda on the people, knowing that it is false, knowing some of the lies they told during COVID were false. And I think there's some consequences that are going to come down on these people, and they're afraid of that. And so they'll do anything, even if it means taking a loss when it comes to the bottom line, to stop Trump. That's why we need Trump in office. We need to clean out the corruption that is a cancer in our government and return our government back to we the people as our founders had envisioned.
You were there front and center, Kari Lake. Your brand new book called Unafraid, Just Getting Started. You were front and center when Trump went to Mar-a-Lago and announced he's running again. I was interested in that because you put the marker down early. He's my guy. I'm with him again. I know you get asked this all the time. I'll ask it again anyway. Your future and any potential future, if asked, joining a Trump ticket, if asked, would you like to do that? Would you like to run him for governor again or some other office? Where do you see things going? And I guess I'll throw in there for good measure. Is there anyone else in the field that interests you, or is it Trump and Trump only for you? That's a lot.
I believe it's President Trump right now, and he's the one man who can get things back on track and get us going in the right direction. I worry about some of the people behind these other candidates. Who's funding them? Who's behind them? We've got, in my opinion, three routes that we can take. We can take the one that we have right now with Joe Biden, which is a fast sprint into globalism/Marxism, because it's really the same thing. It's really the same thing. It's a totalitarian regime. We have the choice to go that direction, which is a fast sprint, and it will be the end of America. We have the other guys, which many of them are surrounded by the key players who got us into endless wars, the Paul Ryans of the world, the Mitt Romney style, Karl Roves of the world, the same people who were leading us into endless wars and globalism. So they're really the same choice. Or we have President Trump putting America first, restoring America to her glory, and putting the needs of our citizens first, and not wars in foreign lands. I mean, President Trump, let's not forget, brought us peace in the Middle East. He was bringing wars to an end. He didn't start any wars. He had our economy humming along. Our bank accounts were strong. Our 401ks, our pension plans were strong. And now we're on a collision course with complete disaster. So I believe President Trump is the man for the moment. As far as my political future, you know, when I had a very powerful person come to my door a few months ago and try to bribe me to get out of politics, and said, how much will it take for you to sit out and not get on the ticket this go around?
Wow.
That's when I knew I have to stay in this fight. It's uncomfortable. It's not fun. The political world is a disgusting swamp. But if they want me out so badly that they're willing to pay me whatever price to stay out, I'm not willing to do that. That tells me we have to keep our movement of we the people actively involved in this next year and a half to take our country back. So I don't know if I run again. There's a Senate seat that's coming up, U.S. Senate seat in Arizona. I'm considering that. I need to make some decisions here, but as my book title is, Unafraid, Just Getting Started, and I'm sure that sends a bit of fear up the spines of some of these globalists who are hoping I will go away, but I won't.
I'm sure you'd think long and hard, or would you be an instant yes if President Trump were to ask you to join his ticket?
Well, honestly, I love it when people ask that, only because usually it's by the fake news media, and I go, okay, so then you're acknowledging that President Trump's going to be the nominee, right?
Right now he seems pretty unstoppable by the numbers, yeah.
I think he does. Listen, everything I say about President Trump is coming from my heart. I know the man. I've become friends with him, and I know that he cares so deeply about this country. He will do whatever he can to fight to save it, to save our country. And so I'm speaking out for him because I love my country as well, and I want to see him back in office. You know, getting on with my life and just going back to life as normal would be wonderful. And I just want to see him in office. And it's not about me. It's about him. It's about his agenda, which is a great pro-America agenda. And so that's what I really want. I speak positively about him. I talk about him because I want nothing in return except for him to get back in the White House and save us from this sinking ship called Joe Biden.
Well, I tell you, the enthusiasm, the excitement people have for you when they see you when you walk into a room, Kari Lake, I mean, I saw it. People people wanted to be in your orbit because you speak from the heart, and you are unafraid, as your book is called, Just Getting Started. And I hope we can stay in touch. Congratulations on the new book. I know it's going to do blockbuster success, and I hope we'll have you back.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I hope people will enjoy the book. I think it's a page-turner. I joke it's a political thriller, a true crime story, a little bit of a how-to, a little bit of everything. But I wrote it with the intent of that you could pick it up at any chapter and just start in the middle. You can start at the end. And, you know, the first chapter is pretty good with a plane trip that almost ended it all for me.
Wow. Just Getting Started is a hint, by the way. That's a hint. I'm taking that as a hint. We haven't heard the last of you. That's all. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Kari Lake. Well, look, he doesn't take any delight in it. But I have a feeling that somewhere in the corner of Mike's mind, he's a good man who would never say this aloud, but Mike Lindell at MyPillow might feel just a smidge of schadenfreude at the news that Bed Bath & Beyond has gone bankrupt. Yeah, the company that first threw Mike's pillows and products out of their store has now filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Well, I can tell you at MyPillow.com, they're anything but bankrupt. They are fantastic. They are high quality. They are doing well by their customers, and they don't need a retailer like Kohl's or Bed Bath & Beyond. Yes, they sold their products and sold them well until politics got in the way. So Mike just took it all online, and MyPillow.com is roaring. He also sells at his store the My Coffee, which I drink now and love. And I hope you'll go online and order all of it. And I hope you'll use my name, Chris Podcast, when you do it. If you go to Chris Podcast as your promo code when you go to MyPillow.com, Chris Podcast, you'll get up to 80% on a lot on that website. You'll get discounts regardless, but some, I mean, particularly some of the clearance stuff, you'll save ridiculous money. So please use the promo code Chris Podcast when you order, and I do hope you do. We have an entire bed outfitted with MyPillow stuff now. We've got the sheets, we've got the blanket, we've got the pillows. Even Dean has his own MyPillow dog bed. Like I said, I drink the MyPillow, or it's not MyPillow coffee. It's called My Coffee. I keep screwing that up. That would be weird if it was pillow coffee. No, it's coffee, which I sip sometimes while leaning against MyPillow. The MyPillow 2.0, the mattress topper, which is like a brand new mattress without paying for a brand new mattress. You know, he'll ship that mattress topper to you for free if you use my promo code Chris Podcast right now. It's covered in that new 2.0 fabric. So are his pillows that keep you cool all night long. He'll send you a second MyPillow 2.0 if you use my promo code Chris Podcast. For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, it's true. He's made me a believer. Dean, my dog, as well. The slippers, the towels, the bed sheets, the pajamas, and so much more. And yes, even the coffee. Go to MyPillow.com. Use the promo code Chris Podcast and save, or call today 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056. Who needs Bed Bath & Beyond anyway? MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast. The Morning Joe crew is very excited to highlight all of the air quote conservatives who've been on social media and going on TV talking about what a disaster the Trump interview with Bret Baier was for Trump. That Trump has admitted to obstruction, basically, with Bret Baier, and that's going to be admissible in trial. And as I told you yesterday, there are a lot of never-Trump conservatives or conservatives who have decided they don't want Trump and they think there's a better way forward. I respect their position, but their passion to see Trump locked away because of it, so, I mean, everybody from, and every one of these guys except Jonathan Turley has been on the show. Ed Morrissey, Andy McCarthy, Hugh Hewitt's out there. They're all, I mean, I bring in Mark Weaver, constitutional attorney, former DOJ spokesperson. Mark, there seems to be this, I don't know, I can only call it almost end zone dancing, this delight, this hope, maybe hope, by some who just want Trump out of the way, want him out of it. Maybe they don't want to see him in prison, but they just hope he'll go away. Because they want DeSantis, they want somebody else, they don't think he can win. Okay. Again, I respect that political point of view. But the brazen almost kind of cheering this or, getting online and going, oh, well, no, now he said it. He's admitted obstruction. He should be locked away under the Espionage Act for the rest of his life. I can't believe there's a single Republican or conservative who supports that notion. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Chris. It seems like Trump is a lot like the weather. Everybody talks about it, but nobody can change it. And that makes people frustrated, right? The guy is a force unto himself. Love him or hate him, he has this ability to connect with people. And as a result, there are folks who would like to control what happens, and they simply can't control him. And that frustrates people, I think.
Yeah. So I've got a lot to cover here with you, but you're always very, very honest. So let's just start with obstruction. This seems to be the thing that Bill Barr, Chris Christie, several of my supposedly conservative / Republican friends think he's done, and that this is his Waterloo. Jonathan Turley. Most people will say, okay, I don't think he should be locked away under espionage charges, but obstruction is a real thing, and it's a serious thing. Mark, here's my problem with this. I don't believe the Department of Justice, as constituted today, comes from a place of honest brokering, and that dovetails with the Hunter story, which we'll get to in a minute. I don't trust these people. I have no reason to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think they're Boy Scouts. So to talk about this like it's all above board and these are mom and apple pie Boy Scouts who are just trying to get to the bottom of enforcing the law and that Trump's some scallywag who stood in their way, I don't subscribe to that storyline. So it's very difficult for me to start talking about the merits of what DOJ has on Trump. So you tell me where I'm wrong.
Yeah, I understand that. There was a time when I was proud of my work at the Justice Department. I was a young man, and it was quite an opportunity to be the spokesman there. But I've grown less proud over the last few years because the Department of Justice seems to be weaponized. And, obstruction is what prosecutors call a process crime. When you can't get somebody on a substantive crime, while you're investigating them, while you're turning their life upside down, you find something that suggests that somehow they stopped you from turning their life upside down, and you charge them with obstruction. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be prosecuted. It means that juries have to look at whether or not the actual investigation was just. And in the case of Donald Trump, that's going to happen. Jurors are going to look at the whole thing, and they may have a very different opinion than some of the Beltway prosecutors and the political prognosticators online.
Are you, for Trump's sake, if in fact you're, I guess, somewhat sympathetic to his point of view, are you optimistic at the venue here? And in fact, I heard somebody say that this Judge Cannon has even relocated this to a certain portion of Florida or Miami that is perhaps even maybe home to some more potential, if you want to say conservative or fair-minded jurors, perhaps a jury pool. I don't know if you know much about that or not.
Well, sure, a little bit. You can move the trial wherever you like, but the jury pool is still taken from the judicial district that you belong to. And so this is the Southern District of Florida, which has several counties, including the urban counties we all know of when we visit South Florida. So the jury pool is pulled from a very wide demographic and geographic area. You might have somebody who's got a house on the edge of the Everglades sitting in the jury box next to some Cuban American from the Cuban sections of Miami. Remember, our country is split almost 50-50 over Donald Trump. Florida's no different. It's hard to imagine a federal jury coming to a unanimous verdict against Donald Trump.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.